And you coming back from Paris and saying, hey, we can't have a Nigerian competing in Miss SA. Do you still hold those views?
100%. And in 2068, I will still hold the view that no Nigerian, no Zimbabwean, no Italian, no American should become Miss South Africa. Miss South Africa. The views I held before election, I'm holding it stronger now. I still believe you have to be documented when you come into South Africa. I still believe that's not Gayton, that's the law. And if you are not documented, you should abahambe, you should leave. People must not mistake if you are born in South Africa that you are South African. A cow being born in a horse stable doesn't make you a horse. But if she's not South African, she cannot represent us.
She can't go on stage, for example, because at the stage she has to be part of the pageant.
She doesn't have to. Why do you mean she has to?
No, but according to the rules that they... let me go to Raim. So here's a key question I was going to ask you.
Oh, yeah, I want to answer one question and answer.
Yeah.
That's nonsense where they say I want to have a certain quota of foreign players in South Africa. That I only want to have a club. I've never said that. That's fake news. I wouldn't say something like that. I wouldn't say something like that.
In terms of the players, because remember,
yes,
this might lead me somewhere before I hit the news. So, Mandla, I'm going to come back to you. I'm not forgetting you, because this is going to be like a double-jointed thing. Now that you talk about foreign and quotas, in football, for example, when you've been in the country for a certain number of years, you then become a naturalized South African, so that you're not counted as being a South African if they're saying only 5 players ought to be. So if let's say a Sereno has been in the country for about 5 years, and you become a naturalized South African, and you're no longer counted as a foreign person in the team. Now, Mr. Mckenzie, this is part of your arts and culture side of things. The 66th edition of Miss SA, 10th of August, Sunbet Arena, is happening.
Right.
Do you have your invitation?
No.
Are you going?
Well, I can't go if I'm not invited. It's not a department that falls directly under us. There's still a big dispute. It's a private company holding Miss South Africa.
Should that change?
Yeah, I think there should be nothing here that you cannot negotiate. I haven't had a chance to look at and say, do we need this? Do we need this? We've never had a situation like the one we're having now with Ms. Vanessa.
So with that, and again, remember pre-elections, hey, abahambe, and then you coming back from Paris and saying, hey, we can't have a Nigerian competing in Miss SA. Do you still hold those views?
100%. The views I held before election, I'm holding it stronger now, post-election. My pre-election views does not change because of being a minister. I still believe you have to be documented when you come into South Africa. I still believe that's not Gayton, that's the law. And if you are not documented, you should abahambe, you should leave. You know, people that say to me, yeah, you are xenophobic. I said, until they kill your child, and then we can't find the person because the person is undocumented. The issue of the young lady is, for me, I was asked upon landing.
Yes.
What do you think of the lady? I said, listen, number one, I don't have all the facts. That was my first thing I said. I said, I tweeted, I said, I don't have all the facts. But what I do know, and in 2068, I will still hold the view that no Nigerian, no Zimbabwean, no Italian, no American should become Miss South Africa. Miss South Africa. Why then? There's Miss World for those things. There's Miss Universe for those things. But South Africa, Miss South Africa is an ambassador of the country, is a person that will export our culture, is a person that will export our way of life to the world, is a person that will go and make sure people want to visit our country. All I'm saying is that I've seen videos, number one, where she's celebrating, and there's nothing wrong celebrating with a lot of Nigerians. But when your father goes on the radio and he says that he met your mom in 2010, and then she fell pregnant in 2010, that makes you 14 years old. The father said, and at the end of the interview, the father was asked, do you see your daughter South African or Nigerian? The father said on the interview, I see her as Nigerian. I listened to it.
Right.
Now, I am not wanting to cast any aspersions, but that gives a bit of vibes. If my father was being asked, what am I? Then I've got no business representing Mr. South Africa, because my father says I'm not South African. But if the lady, people must not mistake if you are born in South Africa that you are South African. A human being born, a cow being born in a horse stable doesn't make you a horse, and that is the law.
So what would you like to see? Because that is literally next weekend.
I would like to see. I would not like to go the route that it is taking now. I would like to see a more amicable atmosphere surrounding this thing. At the moment, all we're asking for is, please give us, please answer our questions. It's not enough when they say one thing and the parents say another thing in the interview. It will be a travesty of justice. There's no South African that can represent America. Why do we allow things? And I'm not even saying she's Nigerian. But if you ask me today, are you South African? I'm going to say yes. Particularly when I'm going to represent South Africa. I need to give. We can't just be told by private people that is getting a lot of mileage out of this thing and South Africa is getting a lot of mileage to say, no, she's South African. The deputy minister came on TV and he explained the situation. So we are now following the correct channels. And if she's South African, I will be the first to apologize and say, if you feel that I've cast any aspersion on you, as the minister, I would like to apologize. But if she's not South African, she cannot represent us.
She can't go on stage, for example, because at the stage, she has to be part of the pageant.
She doesn't have to. Why do you mean she has to?
No, but according to the rules that they have. So that's why I was saying that for you, what would you like to see?
Corporate South Africa can't write the rules that governs us. That's the first thing we must understand. Corporate South Africa has rules in King 1, King 2, King 3, the Companies Act. But they can't tell us we are satisfied with her. Then they should get another name for this pageant. Because this is South Africa we're talking about. Imagine it is being found out, the embarrassment to South Africa, if it is being found out that this woman is not South African. It is humiliating us again on the national stage to say, look, we had a humiliation the other time.
With Obama and the translator.
I am going right there.
Yeah.
It was a joke wherever you go. People are saying...
The sign language, yeah.
The sign language guy. We were made jokes. People were saying that we were the joke of the world. Now, my job as a minister is not only to wanting to... be nasty or whatever. No, that's not my job. My job is not to be nasty to people. My job is to make sure that we don't get humiliated. And you know what's the worst part? If she proves to be Nigerian, she's robbing a South African of a chance. Why are we, Stevie, wonder about the fact that there is some vibes here? The father says that. The father said I met the mother.
The story doesn't tell up.
The story doesn't add up.
Now, and I've got to take a break though, but if, and historically though, we've seen that per lineage, there have been other Miss South Africas who had lineage maybe from a Portuguese and an Italian, and they were able to ascend and wear the crown as Miss SA as South Africans. Can't they then use that as a defense? Let's find out more.
Really strong words from Gayton Mckenzie, guys. This is going to be one of my most sensitive videos, although, I do not struggle with maintaining objectivity. For me, I think objectivity is the key, as my analysis here on Kwazemi really proves, even on my second channel, where I try to analyze the Pan-Africanisms that are actually springing up across the African continent at the moment. You see, I try to, hold firm to objectivity in my analysis and try to really not take sides, but really help all of Africa really see the wider, bigger picture of what is evolving, what's slowly evolving, in Africa at the moment in terms of politics, in terms of governance and political economy, you see. And so the whole case with Chidima Adechina, who was supposed to represent South Africa, in this Miss SA pageant, has actually been rocking the airwaves. You see, especially in social media. And this analysis, anyway, is gonna begin. I'm gonna begin with this post from this really popular Nigerian musician, Burna Boy, who actually made this post, actually saying that it was kind of like a Twitter. Post where he said after Mia Leroux actually was crowned Miss SA, he actually posted this saying that, so after all that, with laughing emojis, you see. And so many South Africans and many Nigerians have been reacting to his tweet, and also Gayton Mckenzie actually gave a direct response to this. And I found Gayton Mackenzie's comments according to Times Live, where Gayton Mckenzie spoke about the fact that Gayton Mckenzie speaking, he says that we do not have a white Miss South Africa. We do not have a black Springbok captain, nor do we have a colored Banyana coach. We see them as South Africans. We have adopted reconciliation as our North Star, guided by our father, Nelson Mandela. You will come around, I did. Our country is not perfect, nor are we as citizens. We face problems and search for answers. Our citizens criticize us as leaders without facing arrest. We will never be separated from this soil, no matter how imperfect. We shall not burden others on their soil. So this is the perspective of Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Gayton Mckenzie, as regards this. He's actually trying to silence, many critics, especially criticisms of xenophobic characters being spread out by South Africans on this black to black hate that actually I think in the 2017 riots and protests as well. I think this was when a majority of the characterization of South Africa as a xenophobic space in the media started slowly cropping up, and then that narrative had actually stuck in the heads and in the minds of many African countries around the continent about South Africa. And then this whole Miss SA thing kind of like brought that into light again. But anyway, I saw this really interesting video on TikTok, and I just wanted us to just consider this. I think it's a TikTok from a TikToker, where she spoke about how that, the whole xenophobic attacks, the whole xenophobic perspectives against this now disqualified, or anyway, she actually stepped down from the Miss SA Beauty contest, Chidema, doesn't represent the wider South Africans, with really, really massive, comments on her post, which I thought that probably we'll just have this video as a really kind of like light phenomenological analysis. So we let the video speak for itself, and let the comments, which I found here under her video, speak for themselves. But let's just listen to what she actually says about this issue, and I'll be back for an analysis.
You to know that it's not all of us. I know there's been a lot of vitriol, hatred spewed over the last few weeks, and I just want you to know that it's not all South Africans. There are some of us who still remember Robert Sobukwe. There are some of us who still remember the contributions of various African countries in our fight against apartheid. We remember. Xenophobia occurs in countries across the world and is used as a political ploy by politicians across the world. I mean, that goes without saying, right? I think in South Africa, because that finds expression in Afrophobia, and like a very hypocritical, white-loving, master-worshipping Afrophobia, that I felt like there was a need to say, it's not all of us. It's not all of us. Because it's also been really embarrassing to see tweets where people are saying that they'd rather have white people here than Nigerian people here. It's honestly really, really embarrassing. So I just want to say it's not all of us.
Yeah. So what do you think? The comments I found under this post actually gave me a really, really, really incredible and interesting view on the fact that many Africans really do not understand South Africa. And this is why I really created this channel, because you see, I really slowly, in my study of the democracy that's actually evolving on the continent of Africa, I discovered earlier on that the democracy in South Africa has to be different. In other words, it's in its ways and its mannerisms and the kind of rhetoric that stems from the political spaces in South Africa. It's actually a lot different to the democracy I see being practiced across other African states. And I really thought to really dedicate this one channel to trying to understand that democracy from that perspective, from the perspective of the rainbowism that really structures what what Nelson Mandela dreamed for South Africa post 1994. And so some really interesting comments are actually on this, video, both from Black South Africans and non-South Africans who are actually still Black. Actually, I thought that we'll just go through them to really understand how misunderstood South Africa is in this really post-colonial, post-apartheid era in Africa, and that probably this could be a sort of like a beginning, a conversation starter for people to, especially Africans, Black Africans, to really start really reconsidering how they really characterize what South Africa represents. Because from my slow understanding, being an outsider, being a really an outsider, I'm Nigerian naturally, as most of you know, and probably I should be having some kind of like solidarity, for most of these comments for Chidima Adechina. But then, when as an informed person, you weigh the arguments for and against, and you try to make a really objective judgment on what's really, going on, then you see that the picture is a little bit wider, you see. And then that's why I enjoy the outsider perspective, because it helps you have a bird's eye view on the multiple arguments that frame what reality should represent. And then it helps us make informed judgments. Gayton Mckenzie sees the problem with Chidima from the perspective of citizenry, from the perspective of the fact that, since Chidima's Mozambican mother argues, especially from the father's audio, that they met in 2010, which should necessarily, cause a stare, because it then argues that if they met in 2010, it means that Chidima should not be 20-something years old, but she should be 15, so to speak. This is according to Gayton Mckenzie's logic, which is really logical, you see. And also the fact that I saw a series of videos about, the whole lack of digitization from Leon Scriber, who is now Minister of Home Affairs, and he's pushing for, especially with the prima facie, report he gave as regards the investigation behind the fraudulent case of identity theft, that Home Office is now trying to really conclude its investigation regarding this Chidima's mother. It then brings a lot of issues about digitalization, in the immigration space in South Africa, and how digitalization needs to come to effect. Because I saw a lot of videos and a lot of complaints of many Black South Africans who actually came, out to speak about the effects and the impacts of the identity, fraud that actually goes on in South Africa, right? I'm not on the ground, but I actually base my research from what I pick out from, the reports from other people. And that's actually how research works anyway. So they claim about how, they actually miss out on the opportunities that they should have had, being the fact that they were, not identified fully as South Africans, requiring to have some of those, pecs as South Africans within the society, in terms of education, in terms of job, in terms of other welfare provisions. So this is actually a really big problem in South Africa, which Home Office really needs to tackle in terms of digitalization. But then, if we go through the comments under this video from this TikToker, I think her name is her TikTok ID is Comrade Jordan River. I would actually advise most of you, if you're not on TikTok, you should really go through the comments. The comments in themselves are on education, because they really show the really different nuances in how South Africa is being understood by South Africans themselves, right? The South Africa in itself is really misunderstood by South Africans, white, black, colored, Indians, and also then a wider misunderstanding of the nation state of South Africa by other non-South Africans within the continent of Africa. It's a complexity that needs to slowly engage us, that we really need to slowly start talking about as Africans, you see, moving forward. So this comment was really interesting for me. She spoke about how, it says it's from Clevo, and I checked this guy Clevo. I think he's also a colored South African, you see, and not necessarily white or something, or anyway colored. I think I would argue you could actually check him if you're on TikTok and check the guy out. So he says she's lying. It's a few of them, but it's most of us. In other words, so he's arguing that even though she's actually trying to apologize to the wider West Africans or other sub-Saharan Africans on the fact that South Africa and Black South Africans aren't xenophobic, he's actually saying that she's lying in that regard, and that it's just a few of the South Africans, but it's most of, probably South Africa in themselves that would be lumped up in this support for Mia Leroux and this support for Chidima Adechina's representation for Miss South Africa as a foreign, as Gayton Mckenzie would identify her as being not necessarily South African, but of different origins, you see. Another interesting comment here was from this, this thread that actually says that this is a Kenyan now speaking. He argues that, as a Kenyan, I'm utterly surprised, appalled, and disappointed. We should be in this together and not against each other. Then another South African, Mighty RSA, says that we cannot force South Africans to love every African country. That's madness, especially those that hate us, you see. And then there's another response there that says that have the same energy for whites colonizing you. So you see, this is really varied understanding of what South Africa represents. Many still see South Africa as a country where there's supposedly a neo-colonialist mentality or a neo-apartheid, philosophy that still guides the cultural and artistic spaces and probably even the political spaces in South Africa. And this is actually coming from, on the wider, Africa. Another really interesting comment I saw on that thread here is this one that actually said that, it's from Manyane Mwamba. So it was actually a sub-comment. It said that it is not all of us who love all our African brothers and sisters because we are one. Then there was this person from South African says that Mwamba, Sithini Isitha Kazelo Sakho. And then Manyane 9 replies that you are looking for attention, right? So you see that even within among the South Africans themselves, the Black South Africans, there are those that have this really multifaceted views on how to really categorize or characterize or interpret this whole problem or this whole issue right now that's really stirring up social media. There was this other comment here when this TikToker here, I think what's her name again, Comrade Jordan River, and the fact that she adds Comrade to her TikTok actually tells a lot about her, probably her what she identifies at. But anyway, this was from Obsidian Geek. He actually argues because in the apology, she actually mentioned Oliver Tambo. And then this guy says, literally, O.R. Tambo's house is a museum and it is in my parents' neighborhood. We used to, I think this is in Zambia. He says that we used to drive by it every day. Or O.R. Tambo lived in Lusaka, and the headquarters of the ANC was at the Comesa buildings down the road from my primary school. It was wild seeing the comments. And then she also here comments that it's disturbing how many South Africans don't understand the help and kindness we received during apartheid from fellow Africans, not these Europeans they worship. So that tells us a lot also about how she really interprets South Africa in that regard. There was this really also interesting one. From Didi, it says that, it says the hate South Africans have against other Africans, the way the Westerners are loved is wild, you see. And then she also says that, she's mortified, that she's also embarrassed. And another guy here said that, the people need to learn more history in schools and South African history, not the Boston Tea Party, history. Another interesting comment actually also from a Jamaican actually going through this whole debacle with Adeshina, and then the Miss SA now being won by Mia LaRue. And I listened to Mia LaRue's interview on SABC, and especially talking about her cochlear implant and the challenges she had as a child upon, ascertaining the notion that she might actually be, a deaf person in South Africa and all that. Really touching interview anyway. But this Jamaican actually says that he's hurt to see South Africa being xenophobic against fellow Africans who stand against apartheid, for freedom, and it's very wrong. So, that was it. Another guy here, Ademir, he actually says that Nigerians banned foreign nationals in acting broadcasts since 2022 October, and it made colorist comments on their light-skinned participants in Miss Nigeria. So really varied comments on that. This other interesting one says that, I always knew South Africa never got their independence. 98% of Black South Africa have been seriously brainwashed and still mentally enslaved. I really pity them. Mandela's sacrifice was in vain. You see, so this is the interpretation. This is from Mercusio. I don't know if probably that's Kenyan name, but anyway. There was this other guy, Nabatia Rehemi. He actually argues that he's speechless to what's going on in South Africa. Like, how can South Africa be hating on a Nigerian? If the parents did something bad, take it upon with them. Why hate the innocent girl? So that was a view from that guy there. There's also this one that actually said that, definitely not all of us, my sister. South Africans are quick to fight other Africans, but can't do the same to whites. The self-hate is embarrassing. And another guy here, nothing to see here, says, it really isn't all of us. I switched off to Black South African vitriol online because I'm embarrassed by many of these comments. Black South Africans are self-hating and have white worship. Embarrassing. You see, so we see this really varied understanding, even among the Black South Africans, about their own nation, South Africa. So this one was born in Central Africa. He says that, as someone that was born in Central Africa, I'm deeply hurt by this because when we walk in the streets of South Africa, people think we are Nigerians, usually because we look alike in this region of the continent. So seeing this, I feel personally hurt as if I was a Nigerian. This is disturbing and disappointing. Only when the world shows you guys the same type of hate, you will understand. Then Jasmine actually also said she's from Botswana. She says that it's comforting to hear this as a Botswanan. We were wondering what the F is going on in the Rainbow Nation next door. So these are reactions from African neighbors around South Africa. So I think these comments are really important, so that the Africans themselves, and I know most of you in my comment on this channel who are actually loyal and watch the shows I actually put here on this channel. Many are from the Indian community, the Afrikaner community, what we would call the whites, the coloreds, the blacks and the Indians. And so it's really important that you guys understand how the wider Africa, right, understands you guys, especially the South Africans on this channel who are really patriotic. Those, the likes of Gayton, Mckenzie, who really want, a patriotic South Africa to evolve from the really bitter history that has actually bedeviled the nation since the 1800s, ever since the evolution of the nation's history actually started coming to the fore. And so it's really important that, the wider, you patriotic South Africans understand how other African nations actually see and interpret what's going on in South Africa, so that we all have a clear understanding of where the continent stands as regards, major political debates, economic debates as a continent going forward, and as Africans or people who are loving of Africa. All right. So, this other comment here says that South Africa will soon give birth. This is from Avila. It says that South Africa will soon give birth to this hatred she is pregnant with. Watch the space. History will take its place rightfully. Another guy here, user MOZA, I think this is South African. He says that you all confuse patriotism with xenophobia. Okay. Yeah, so that was that, and this other interesting comment as well. I think I have two more, and I'll just round up with some final thoughts. It says that, Chidima here, this is Tommy, the bridal consultant. She actually argues that Chidima ruined her opportunity by having her face painting representing other countries other than South Africans, you see. So I think in the picture here where Chidima actually painted her face, I think it was a Mozambican flag and other flags. It just didn't really, portray that spirit, that evolving patriotic spirit that is slowly evolving right now as I really study and understand South Africa at the moment. She just didn't represent that energy, and a lot of South Africans could really pick from that in that regard. She says that she's great, and I'm sure she can be Miss Nigeria. One other person here says we don't care, she is out. Okay. Another one says we are not xenophobic. Kwere, these patriots affairs, white worshippers, and thanks, babe, not all of us preach. You see. So I think that's a South African. So into the last comment, it actually says that who made you our ambassador, Wena Slim? And somebody also another person, Malaza, this is a South African, really angry with this Jordan TikToker, says that this one is being sent by her Nigerian lover who gave you the audacity to come and speak on our behalf. Okay. And the final comment, that was actually the final comment on this post that I picked from a series of really lots of comments that actually I couldn't go through all of them, but I think it would be nice that if you guys can go to TikTok and look for this lady's channel and really go through the comments on this video if you have time. Anyway, I know most of you are busy, but this is, for me anyway, it was really interesting to really see the perspective of the young people of South Africa and of young people of Africa and how they are really interpreting the contemporary South African society of today, and also how this understanding of South Africa itself is split among South Africans, both black South Africans, you see, and even Indians, colored and white. And there's just this whole complex understanding of what South Africa represents. And then that's why you see the task of the likes of Gayton Mckenzie then brings a lot of pushback from many various quarters. You see, many of you on this channel I know are really supportive of Gayton Mckenzie. Gayton Mckenzie speaks of a patriotic spirit. Gayton Mckenzie wants to galvanize a form of patriotism that really characterizes what South Africa to represent. He wants to fierce non-racialism, you see, and that's manifested through sports and all that. And that's the vibe I get from Gayton Mckenzie when he speaks about his vision for South Africa and his vision for the Ministry of Sports. But then there are other South Africans within South Africa themselves who have a really alternative understanding of the society they find themselves, you see, with the whole issue of the fact that, the argument that actually says that a lot of the resources are managed by a few, of the populace in South Africa, and that doesn't speak of the equity they expect a non-racial society to represent. And so these are the very points. And then there's now the wider South Africa. I saw a video by one of my fellow YouTubers, a 360 Experience, where he was really blowing hot on a discussion on SABC. He actually also saw that discussion between two newscasters discussing how the wider Africa is actually demanding some form of explanation on the government of national unity and what the government of national unity represents. What is it? What form of democracy it is? What new dispensation is President Ramaphosa trying to really, establish in South Africa in the light of the fact that South Africa was among the liberation fighters that actually set forth to fight or free, the South African region, the region of South Africa, I think SADC, for example, from the apartheid strongholds at the time, of the liberation fight. And also, I think I saw another video on his channel where Musi Maimane was calling that the SADC conference should be taken away from Zimbabwe and probably moved to. So we see that there's a really strong patriotism that is actually being forged in South Africa, and a new nation is slowly emerging that Africa hasn't understood yet. This is my understanding of what I'm studying and what I'm really understanding, and that's why I really set up this channel, and I'll really keep on going through and really pushing us to really understand what really is becoming of the contemporary society of South Africa. I think there's a reason that South Africa, this kind of really diverse society was actually placed in Africa in itself, despite its problems. And I think it represents the really underbelly, the really ugly underbelly of what it means in our humanities to have multiple races could join and try to forge a form of unity or form of democracy in that regard, where they debate really difficult issues, racial issues, cultural issues, different variations of sensitivity in those discussions, all having to force themselves together to become one. I think that's one area for me anyway. I give a thumbs up to the politicians, especially in South Africa. It must be really difficult to be a politician in South Africa. It must be really difficult to be a policeman in South Africa. It must be really difficult to be a lawyer in South Africa if you have to represent probably a client of a different race. So there has to be a really total demolition for South Africa to succeed. The way I see South Africa, there has to be a total demolition of racialism. There has to be a really firm, solid form of non-racialism that pervades all industries. And then, it's really difficult how that would, kind of like succeed, especially with the fact that we have a large percentage of the electorate who really do not see South Africa as a non-racial society, and who really do not even want South Africa to be a non-racial society. Many South Africans see South Africa as a nation of Black South Africans, while many actually also see South Africa as a nation of patriotic South Africans, patriotic rainbowist South Africans who actually encompass the different, the Indians, white collards, and blacks that actually encompass what Nelson Mandela envisioned for the nation. And so we see it's a really tricky place to really ascertain what South Africa represents, both for South Africans and also the wider African, especially for West Africans, because I think, from my understanding as an academic from West Africa, many West Africans do not understand South Africa. But anyway, what do you guys think about this Gayton Mckenzie speech here? I think it's been a lot of information in this video. We'll stop here and I will see you on the next one. But share your thoughts. Let's hear from you what you think about Gayton Mckenzie's speech, the TikToker speech here, and the commentary. Share your thoughts in the comments.